Что вы думаете о роли и влиянии научной фантастики на развитие цивилизации? Меняется ли степень этого влияния сейчас?
Yes, I do. And I can give I can actually give an example. Because, science fiction totally, any book or also like TV or whatever, films can of course influence. But as soon as they become like mass phenomenons like Philip K. Dick or Star Trek, I'm a big Star Trek fan, I have to say, then they can really kind of like influence the culture. So, for example, Star Trek had the first, actually, Gene Roddenberry, the inventor of Star Trek, he had the idea that the captain in the first Star Trek Enterprise was a woman, and they were not ready for this, They were like, no, we don't want that, and so on, But he kept on to like really force this, like the first kiss of two women in any television and so on. He was really like, some episodes were like even censored in some US American states because they were like too progressive. So Star Trek is like, for me, as one of the probably most watched TV shows ever, it's a very perfect example for me how science fiction can affect society and culture, especially because Star Trek has like such a humanitarian approach,
Как вы думаете, почему в мире воображаемого будущего в научной фантастике так мало внимания уделяется изобразительному искусству?
Very good question. I'm not even thinking that it's true. But I think it has to do with the abstraction in art, or its abstract capability of something, and its relations to society. Actually, let's stay with Star Trek. Let's stay with Star Trek. It has a lot of, because I always try, let's say like this. Always when I give a talk somewhere, like in some art institution or something, I always try to like push them that I do something about Star Trek. I also try to like come up with Star Trek, and they have art, but I think they use it more like as a very symbolic thing. So art can be, that's actually how I deal with it in my work, that I'm dancing a ballet here, and I'm actually not dancing a ballet because I think that I need to learn how to dance ballet, or because I'm like super kind of like overwhelmed by Russian high culture, but it's actually by really kind of like tackling or like challenging the symbol that ballet has in Russia, and it is high culture. It's like unchangeable classical ballet. And of course, it won't be changed like classical ballet, but in science fiction you ask different questions, I guess. You ask probably more the question of like how the society changes, or will change, or has to change. And maybe it's an underestimation of art, Winston Churchill, when Great Britain entered the Second World War, his parliament people, his ministers were like, first thing we need to cut is cultural funding. And he was saying, what are we fighting for then? And I think that's maybe a little bit also the flaw that is in science fiction, because it's already art in itself, right? When someone, it's already an abstraction of the future. So maybe they don't give enough space for like, how can art influence the future? Maybe they don't think about it. But I'm not sure, I have no real answer.
So the question number 3, which...
Могло бы искусство получить дополнительный импульс в развитие, если бы было бы подробно описано в научной фантастике?
How affect the artistic practices of the present?
I think there's a lot of artistic practice, on the other hand, that is strongly, like especially now, like with all the like internet and already post-internet art, and I think like science fiction took an immense role now in art, you know. And then also we have to ask ourselves, what is actually science fiction? You know, is science? I mean, is science fiction speculation? You know, or is science fiction really just fiction? You know, I mean, or is it? So science fiction can be something that we like speculate about, might be in 5 years, 20 years, or that we're like working to, you know, or like it might even be predictable in some certain ways, you know, like, you know, like some things are predictable when you know how much money you have to, you know, so companies know we want to do this and we have a certain amount of money. I think it's more, I think the art world is actually pretty aware of it. I think the real problem is in the art world that they are often skeptical. They have a certain pseudo-skepticism towards science fiction because they think that they have like sometimes a very like dark image of like robots taking over. I have a very optimistic image for like, I'm a total pro-tech guy, you know. So I think the art world, on the one hand, is like very admiring. Some are very skeptical. It's like probably like all society, but they all use it. They all work with it, you know. They all like speculate on it without knowing it. Maybe the science fiction should also like, I don't know actually, because I don't really know how art works in science fiction. I never really thought about that, you know. I think people should be, I mean, what Churchill said, you know. I mean, like, art is actually an indicator for the situation of the society. If the art is sick, the society is sick, you know.
Как вы разделяете мир воображаемого и реально прогнозируемого будущего?
No. I dream often about future. I also connect that with my own future, to say. I also speculate on my own future, so like the let's say like the dream influences the speculation and the other way around. I don't think that these two things can be separated from each other, you know, because they come from maybe an ideal or something like this. So I cannot separate that, no. I just have like hopes or like wishes. And I mean, I can say that, for example, I used to be more pessimistic with some certain things, but for example, the more and more I go into the internet and I watch, the more I work, or like the more I look into the future, the more optimistic I actually become, you know. And I'm pretty often have the feeling that like my optimism is somehow fulfilled, you know. And so I think, yeah, I'm actually pretty happy. I have the feeling that my speculation and my dreams, they actually work pretty well together right now. Not when it comes to money, but you know, from like what I expect of society.
And the last.
Повлияло ли на вашу творческую деятельность какое-нибудь научно-фантастическое произведение?
I mean, I'm sorry because now I also feel like I'm repeating myself because it is actually Star Trek. It's really nothing else because like it's like the most genius philosophical. They have like the most interesting philosophical constructions. You know, the question, everything is in there. The question of hierarchy, the question of God. If you think about politics, you know, like interventional politics. The how do you call it? The first directive, you know, of the Federation, that you should not intervene with other cultures and so on. It's always kind of like worked around, you know. So there's always, so like the question is always, how much should we actually, like, there's always a certain amount of humanity coming in, you know. It's of course, you know, like you can always say, I'm a pacifist, I don't want to have war somewhere, but you know, like you always have to question yourself, your own privileges, and what do you expect for yourself of like the world and so on. And if you do not make that count for other people, you actually fail. So if in Star Trek they would really always just stick to the first directive, the society would fail, you know. There is no way. So it's like always about like differentiating, and it's like I don't know. It's like this is how for me, this is like what correlates the most with my political view on most of the things. And I mean, of course, like aesthetically, I find it awesome, you know, like from the fashion and so on. And there are other films that I like. I mean, of course, everyone loves Blade Runner, but like when it really comes about to thinking and complexity and so on, and like the philosophical way, it's absolutely Star Trek. And yeah, you know. So that's it.